The sky's not blue.
Welcome back to the Cult House Podcast. I'm your host, the scholar of spite and the Saturday Night Delight, Roger Riddell. Joining me today, he is the guitarist for Chicago death metal legends Broken Hope and the newer grindcore project Earthburner, as well as an author and a producer, Jeremy Wagner. How are you doing today, Jeremy?
Doing great, Roger. Happy Friday to you, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I've wanted to have you on the show for a while. Because going back to 2011, when I was doing some stuff for the AV Club while I was in grad school, I had done an oral history of Chicago's metal scene, and you were like one of the dudes that I never did get a chance to get in touch with for that. So I'm stoked to finally get a chance to talk to you today.
Oh, cool. Yeah, me too. I'm glad we could connect. And I watched some of your other interviews on YouTube and stuff. And I like how you use the old EC Comics kind of lettering and stuff for your episodes and whatnot. And the last one I watched online was with Dale Patterson, the
Yeah.
that the guy, the black metal publishing guy, and that was really great. I got to meet him once when we played Broken Hope played London, and that was a great interview.
Oh,
So
thanks.
great to connect with you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the kind words there. So I guess just to start out, let's talk about Earthburner. I know that the debut album Permanent Dawn is set to come out on November 8th. Tell me a little bit about that project. I know it, kind of got started in 2011, but it was on the back burner for a little bit.
Yeah, in fact, the history of Earthburner goes back even further. Back around 2000 or so, the fifth Broken Hope album of the 90s, the last album we did in the 90s was Grotesque Blessings. And during that era, supporting that album on tours in North America and Europe and stuff, um, as time went on, I knew that Broken Hope was probably going to go on hiatus, if not break up, for good. And um, in 2002, we had officially went on hiatus. And a reason for that, just for people, watching this interview who may not know, is um, after Grotesque Blessings came out, our original singer Joe had left the band right before our North American tour, and it was basically Brian Griffin, our longtime guitar player and producer, and me, and we had like hired guns filling in everything from vocals to bass and drums, right? So that in a short amount of years between 99 and 2002 was kind of a revolving door of guys filling in just so we could tour. And for me personally, um, it just didn't feel right. It wasn't, Joe, our original singer, him and I went back to high school together. And when he left, um, for me also personally, it was like, man, Joe's leaving, and he was like we were attached at the hip. So I respected his reasons for, not wanting to tour or whatever. So um, the Joe element was gone. Our original drummer Ryan was gone. And for me, again, it didn't feel right. For me, uh, corny and as mushy as it might sound, like I believe in having a band of brothers. And I wanted, a band that had chemistry and not, part-time employees or whatever, if you will. And I'm like, got to put the brakes on it. So right before we went on hiatus, I would say 2000, 2001, I was already writing these grindcore type of songs because I worship Terrorizer's World Downfall, and I worship Napalm Death to this very day. And I was uh, I just love grindcore. So I was writing these songs that weren't like Broken Hope songs. And also even the tuning, like guitar wise, Broken Hope, we tuned to D standard. I wanted to tune down to B standard. So like Earthburner had I wanted to make sure Earthburner had a different sound. It wasn't like Broken Hope Junior or something. And also the elements of grindcore songs where you've got I just love ultra blasting parts, and I love to come in and pummel with super heavy riffs and do it all, in the frame of like my short attention span, where it's like bam, 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 if you will, So to that end, because Broken Hope's songs are a little more involved. They're a little bit longer, and we've got intros, verse, chorus, bridge, solos, melodies, and all that stuff. And I love writing Broken Hope music, to be clear, but I just had I needed a grindcore fix, and I'm like, I'm gonna do this band and I named it Earthburner, and the Earthburner is the name of a Broken Hope song from that last album we did at the time, Grotesque Blessings. We have a song called Earthburner. I'm like, that'd be a cool name for a grind band. So I actually started writing grind songs for Earthburner first with like a drum machine, and then I had a real drummer and all this stuff. And in fact, anyone who uh, might remember this magazine, either if you were alive at the time or if you weren't born then and know of it, Metal Maniacs magazine. I did an interview with Metal Maniacs back in the day, and I name dropped Earthburner. They asked, "What are you up to now?" I'm like, "Well, I'm doing this. Got this grind band I want to do called Earthburner," and they put it in print. So then people were, asking me, "Hey, what's up with this Earthburner thing?" Blah blah blah. And I said, "It's something I want to do, and I'm working on stuff." But it kind of went quiet. I didn't pursue it. And Broken Hope went on hiatus in 2002. Um, and during the course of that time, um, Earthburner was always in my brain. But I ended up doing this other band called Lupara that did one album and an MTV music video that uh, was really cool. It got nominated for Best Metal Video of the Year because Headbangers Ball had come back by this time, mid 2000s, and Jamie Jost of Hatebreed was hosting it. So there was a little moment in time where Lupara was all I was doing, and then Lupara ended. We did one album in that video, and a little time went by, and I focused more on my writing. I've always been a writer since grade school, and I'm like, uh, as I was getting short stories and stuff published, I wrote my first novel that was kind of like what I would equate to a band's demo tape, like in respect to, oh God, I thought this is the best thing ever, that my first novel, but like a band's demo tape too, with that attitude, like our demo is great. I still had a lot to learn. It wasn't that great, I still had to keep working on my craft as a writer. So, 2000 to like 2010, I just kept writing stories and trying to get published, and I finally sold a short story to a major publisher, say St. Martin's Press, and that ended up getting me a book deal for the novel I wrote after my demo starter novel, which is my first published novel, The Armageddon Chord, which came out around 2010. And then because of that novel and that book deal, I was able to write full time and quit my day job. However, my metal heart always remained, and I'm like, I was still writing riffs and doing stuff. So in 2011, as you had mentioned, Earthburner came back, and that's where I first met drummer Mike Miczek, who was the original Earthburner drummer in 2011. And we did a 3-song EP. We had a different singer. We didn't have a bass player. So on the 3-song EP, I think it's still available on Bandcamp. It was like the singer Ryan, or drummer Mike, and me. And the thing with Mike and I, when we were writing Earthburner songs and doing that EP, and we did a video as well, we would screw around and play Broken Hope songs. And Mike was really young at the time, but he was such a sick drummer. And Mike still likes to remind me to make me feel old. He's like, I was born like 3 months after Swamped and Gore, Broken Hope's first album came out. And I'm like, all right, thanks for, telling me I've been around so long. But he's such a sick drummer. And when we would write Earthburner songs and screw around and play all these Broken Hope songs, like Mike, he was like fresh out of high school. He could play the Broken Hope songs, and certain songs, like when I told you we'd in '99 when we were getting hired hands to tour with, there's certain songs drummers, had to be able to play that are pretty intense. Like one of our songs, The Cloning, for example, off our Loathing album, and Siamese Screams also for Loathing. Those involve drums of a certain caliber, and Mike, this young kid, could do that, And what ended up happening is during that hiatus, Roger, from 2002 to 2012, that's 10 years. During those 10 years, I was always getting hit up by promoters and fans around the world. Please bring Broken Hope back, blah, blah, blah. And that was very important to me, but I vowed never to do Broken Hope if I didn't have the right lineup. And unfortunately, around 2010 is when I was working on trying to get the original Broken Hope lineup back together at the same time as Earthburner. But our singer Joe Tacek from Broken Hope, he had committed suicide. So I'm like, man, I don't know if Broken Hope will ever happen, And then 2012 rolled around, and we were approached by a management booking agency company, like this entity that did both manage bands and book bands worldwide. And they approached me. We had some meetings, and they're like, we'll help you put together a lineup, because I, underscored what I told you, Roger, that for me, it's not just business. It's really, I wanted chemistry and brothers, a band of brothers, So if I was going to do it, I wanted the right people, and people who could not only play the songs, but like had the right attitude and whatnot. And for anyone that's in a band or has been in a band, it's not always easy to have personalities that mesh, no matter what, and that's just wishful thinking. But I got really lucky because thanks to that management company and a couple other people, like Sean Glass, he was our bass player on a couple albums in the '90s, and he was part of that '90s lineup to a certain extent. He's the one who introduced me to Mike Miczek for Earthburner. So to that end, when I was looking to put Broken Hope back together, Sean Glass was on board to return on bass. And then Mike was already drumming with me for over a year. And I knew he could play all the songs. And he's like, one of my best friends. And so the chemistry part and the skill part were already in place for drums, me on guitar, Sean on bass. And then we were like, let's find the right singer. And I mean, when we put the call out, I talked to like uh John Gallagher of Dying Fetus. He's a good friend and loves Broken Hope, and he was down to do vocals depending on his schedule and what could happen, and some others. And what we ended up doing is we had a short list of people, and Damian Lesky of Gorgasm were based out of Indiana, and um, Damian Lesky, the singer, he's from Chicago. So we had someone in our backyard who like fit the bill. And when we tried people out, Damian just nailed it. Uh, he's very respectful to the legacy of Joe Thyachuk too, that type of guttural singing and whatnot. So before long, we got a lineup, and we announced we were back in 2012, and we immediately went on this Return of Broken Hope tour, and we did this great tour as direct support to Obituary. And I think the tour was called Carnival of Death, and it had like Obituary, Broken Hope, Jungle Rot, Decrepit Birth, and I think one other band. And boom, we came back, and then on that tour, we got signed to Century Media Records uh, without even demoing anything. They just were like, we want to sign Broken Hope. And we did that. Everything just happened quick. And in 2013, we put out our first album since, 99, and that was Omen of Disease. And so what is it, 2024? So for the last 12 years, it's like we went on hiatus for 10 years, and for the last 12 years, Broken Hope's been back nonstop. So that said, Earthburner always in the corner of my mind, and always like I want to do Earthburner, because Broken Hope came back in 2012. Earthburner got put to the side, right? So um, I was talking to Mike and my drummer about we got to do Earthburner, dude. We got to really like bring that back. We got to like do an album and really do it right. And at the time it was just talk. And my stepson, Tyler, he's in a grindcore band called Glory Hole Guillotine. And he was like, if you ever bring Earthburner back, I'd love to play bass and be a part of that, because he's a real like I call him an old soul, like an old metal soul, because he's in his late 20s. But ever since he was a kid, since he came into my life, he knows metal like an encyclopedia. So like his favorite band is Iron Maiden. So like the first tattoo he got when he turned 18 was Eddie on his arm from the Killers album. But he also loves everything: grindcore, crust, hardcore, punk, extreme metal. And when I say he's a walking encyclopedia, he's got his finger on the pulse of all these bands I never even heard of. So, for example, the band Sanguisugabog or 200 Stab Wounds, he knew all those bands like when they had demos out, and he'd be like, oh, you gotta like check this band out. It's this is Sanguisugabog, and they're from Ohio, or 200 Stab Wounds, blah blah blah, check them out, and really great stuff. And he's always turning me on the band. So anyway, as time went on, I don't know, this was probably maybe 2 years ago. Um, I actually ended up becoming friends with Devin Swank, the singer of Sang with Sugabog, because by that then, after Tyler turning me on to their demos and raving about them, they had albums out and became extremely popular. And Devin, um, when I met him, was is a huge Broken Hope fan, and well, we would talk about Broken Hope and extreme metal and all this stuff. And he finally was like, I don't know, one day, a couple years back or whatever, shit, it might have been even less than 2 years ago, because what happened is Devin's like, what's going on with Earthburner? Are you ever going to do that again? Like, he knew all about Earthburner. And I'm like, I've been talking about it with Mike and Tyler, like we should do it in sometime or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And we didn't have a singer. And Devin just said, hey, if you bring Earthburner back, I'd love the opportunity to sing. And I'm like, no brainer for me. We'd love to have you. You're sick vocalist. You're a great friend. Blah blah blah. And Roger, again, like in the blink of an eye, the next thing I know, that was like Devin saying he wanted to be part of Earthburner, and Tyler and Mike talking to them. That was the fire that was lit under my ass to go, let's do it now. And in short order, next thing I know, because I already had it, after all these years, an album's worth or more material written for Earthburner. And within a few months, I had studio time booked, and we went in the studio, we recorded the album, and then on top of it, I brought in my good friend Mitch Harris of Napalm Death, because anyone that knows Mitch or has heard Napalm Death albums, Mitch, uh, yes, he's a guitar player in Napalm Death, but he's the guy that also does these really crazy high-pitched vocals on the albums and live backup vocals for Napalm. So I'm like, Mitch, I'm doing this band Earthburner. I'm financing this album. I'd love to have you participate. And he was only going to appear on like a couple of tracks. And what happened is, and it's a beautiful thing, I had sent him some rough demos of what we're going to record. When he came in the studio to do vocals, which were supposed to be for maybe one or two songs as a guest vocalist, he actually came in with ideas for all the songs. So we're like, dude, go for it. Do whatever you want. So he actually participated in every track on the Earthburner album, Permanent Dawn. And so we made him an honorary member, because he really brought a new dimension to the album and the band. And Mitch, with all respect, he had retired from Napalm Death to focus on his family and stuff. Um, and but he still loves creating music and doing stuff. So when I say honorary member, it's one because he can't commit to being in a band full time, but because of his contributions across the entire album, we're like, you're a major part of this band now. Even if you can't play with us live at every show or whatever, we got to have you in Earthburner no matter what we write and record in the future. So that was just like a pleasant surprise. And then we also had these great contributions from Ross Dolan of Immolation. He did a guest vocal appearance, I think, on the first track, Necrodesiac. And then this other guy, Jake Cannavale, who is from New York. He's in a grind band called Vixen Maw, and he's also an actor. He's a really great actor. And for anyone watching this, if you know the actor Bobby Cannavale, that's his father, who's like a really well-known, famous Hollywood actor. But Jake himself, aside from acting and all that, he's a diehard extreme metalhead, and definitely has great vocals. So we invited him to do guest vocals on a cover that you'll everyone will eventually hear. We did a cover of a Corrosion of Conformity song, like an old COC song from the album Animosity that was on Metal Blade Records. And the track is called Positive Outlook. So we had Jake contribute to that. So anyway, did the album, got it all done, and then what I did was shop the album to labels basically because I financed the recording, the mixing, the mastering, and was able to have a whole package and shop it around. And we it it's kind of funny, Roger. It's almost like life coming around in full circle because the label we signed to, M Theory Audio, which is a fantastic label, the owner of the label, Marco Barbieri, he's the guy who originally signed Broken Hope to Metal Blade Records because he was Metal Blade's A&R guy back in the 90s. And then he became the president of Century Media for years. So when Broken Hope came back and we had that Century Media deal, Marco was the president then. So it's like just like these little circles, with my life and Broken Hope and Earthburner. So Marco was really into the band, gave us a great deal. And as they say, the rest is history. Our debut album, Permanent Dawn, is coming out November 8th this year. And I couldn't be happier. I'm happy as hell to see Earthburner is like officially back. It's not like just talk or, EPs and like a side project. It's like a real band. It's a huge fixture in my life, and we're already writing our second album. It's not like a side project or anything. And the universe is talking and made it happen, and here we are. I'm telling you, we've got Earthburner album coming out and all this stuff. It's just really exciting. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the history of Earthburner from way back when to 2011 to now. And it's a big part of my life now. So, and I'm really, really happy to not only talk about it, but to just tell everyone we've arrived, Earthburner's really arrived. So it's cool.
Yeah, and I love how all of those existing relationships between all of the different members of the band, ultimately brought it together because it really goes back to highlight what you had said about the importance of everyone in a band having chemistry and having that noticeable bond. Because like I know there's been times where I've maybe seen a band live and like could tell that they were just phoning it in and didn't want to be there anymore. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, like you can always tell that difference when that bond is strong and when people are having a good time doing what they're doing, and then when maybe people are just, phoning it in for like the check or whatever.
Yeah. Right. And with me to that point, I one that's part of why I put the brakes on Broken Hope is people were phoning it in, and I never phone anything in. Also, I don't do anything half-assed. When I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, and when I do it, I want to do it the right way. And with regard to that, that's why um, it took 10 years for Broken Hope to come back because I want to make sure that Broken Hope came back the right way. And we even had a lineup change in a short amount of time when we did come back. In 2014, we had to change a bass player and lead guitar player. And I've had the same lineup now with Broken Hope for 10 years. And it's like such a phenomenal lineup. And that's crazy just hearing myself say that with all this time, all these timelines with Broken Hope and everything, like going on hiatus for 10 years, coming back 10 years later, and then now 10 years later, I've got I've had this solid lineup, and that's important to me. Not people that don't phone it in and not doing things half-assed. And also with Earthburner, same thing. It was all a matter of Earthburner was extremely important, but it wasn't all there, if you will, and that's why it got put to the side. Broken Hope became a priority, and Earthburner was important to me, but um, it had to be done right, like the lineup and the commitment. To your point, it couldn't be. I wouldn't allow things to be phoned in and just like this is a side project and these guys came in and did stuff, no matter who the guest vocalists are or whatever, or if it's a super group, yay, that's cool. It's a side project and whatever. And it would, even if it was just that, it would have been great. I would have made sure that um, the lineup was solid and we delivered something really great. And chalk it up to, aside from my commitment to do things all the way, all in, you know, uh, that dedication, chalk it up to things happen for a reason and the universe speaketh. And that's why uh, I think the time was right. I just had to wait a while for uh, Tyler, the bass player, and Devin Swank to come into my life and say, let's do Earthburner. It could have been a completely different band and sound and everything if I had done it years ago with a different lineup. Um, so I'm really I'm like I look at the universe like the universe is looking at me or something like now the time is right and it's going to be done right. And I'm really proud of the lineup, grateful that things happened when they did with the right people, and when people hear, we've released 2 singles already, so people got a taste of what Earthburner is about. But when everyone hears the whole album, um, I hope and I also believe that the impact will be strong because back to me telling you, Roger, that I don't do things half-assed. Like going into the studio and paying out of my own pocket to make the album, I wanted to make sure we went to the best studio possible, Criteria Recording Studios, to track all the music, and then Hypercube Studios in Chicago to do the vocals. I wanted the best production period. And my co-producer, Tommy McWilliams, who produced Earthburner's debut album with me, he brought a whole level of skills and know how to definitely not only help me make the album sonically massive, but also played an important role in getting the best out of everybody as well. And um, for me, my attitude with albums is an album is eternal. Okay, so um, for some bands, I understand they've got certain budgets or even the style of music with a punk attitude is like we don't care about high quality production and we'll blast it out and whatnot. I mean, look at Terrorizer, World Downfall. They think Scott Burns, the producer himself, told me years ago, because I'm such a Terrorizer, World Downfall freak. Anyone involved with that album, I always want to pick their brain. So like Jesse Pintado from Napalm Death, the late great Jesse Pintado, he was guitar player for Terrorizer on World Downfall. I'd pick his brain all the time. And uh, when I picked Scott Burns' brain, he's like, we knocked that album out in a day and basically did it with the band live in the studio. Um, and I think he said they did it on 8-track and all that. And it's a fucking great album. I like the production, but there's a more of a raw edge. And for me with my bands and Earthburner, I'm like, we're taking a grindcore band, really extreme metal, but I don't need to follow a blueprint or mold with an attitude that the album's got to be so raw sounding or lo-fi or whatever. That's not for me. I want the best production. Whoever buys that album is going to get sonically superior sounding album to the best of our abilities and where we were recorded. And that doesn't take away from the intensity or the pummeling or anything. So it's just a combination of my vision and goal to have a grindcore album that has the best production ever without compromising any of the intensity. And again, my attitude of an album is forever. Once it's out, that's it. You can remaster back catalogs, you can remix stuff in the future, but you know, first impressions are everything. And again, that attitude of or mindset of an album is eternal. I want to make sure that the Earthburner album was sonically superior to the best it could be. And I think we delivered that. So it's just, all that is circled back to, not doing things half-assed, phoning it in or taking it lightly, if you will. So, by the way, one thing you'll learn about me as an interviewer, I have a knack for making a point, but giving you Encyclopedia Britannica back history and explanations to get back to the point. So thanks for
Yeah, I
letting me
love
get
that
your
though.
ear on my what it is about Earthburner and this album that are important to me.
I think like from my perspective, when I'm, listening to an interview or, even reading an interview in a magazine or whatever, I never complain about getting too much information. It's
Yeah.
better to have too much than not enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And my publicist, Nikki, who set this up. Um, uh, I've gotten report. I've been working with Nikki for years. Even back when she was at Central Media, but working Broken Hope, and she's like one of the greatest publicists I've ever worked with. But she's always gotten reports that, Jeremy, you give good interview from what I'm told, from journalists and stuff. And I'm like, all right, that's good because as someone who reads, interviews with bands and stuff, a lot of people just give short answers. Yep, no, or whatever. So I just like to make it worth people's while. If you're going to take the time to watch, um, your YouTube channel or read an interview with a magazine with me, I like to make sure I tell a story and give info and try to make it interesting instead of just your standard, uh, yes, no answers from people that have nothing to say about their art. And I guess you could chalk that up to me not doing things half-assed too with interviews.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that not wanting to do anything half-assed, that's part of what makes the dynamic between you and Mike work so well too? Because like in the 6 years that I've known him, I've seen him play with like 4 or 5 different bands, and he puts everything into each of them. Like none of them feel like they're just, a thing that he's doing on the side of one of the other bands.
Right. Yeah, um to Mike's credit, um as a drummer, um he's played with a bunch of different bands over the years outside of Broken Hope. So if you think about Mike as a drummer, and his skills, what what what's great about Mike's drumming skills and the bands he's played with is he's been able to broaden the scope of playing in different styles. So he's played with like doom kind of bands like the Atlas Moth, if you know them, or another band he's in is Black Cross Hotel, which mixes these almost goth kind of new wave elements with metal, totally different kind of creature. And he's filled in on drums for Jungle Rot on European tours and stuff. And he's just such a well-rounded drummer. And I think that the reason he's well-rounded and his skills are so great is because he isn't afraid to play different styles of music on drums, and he's got that experience. And you're right, he doesn't do anything half-assed either. Whether if he's signed up to play with a band, um, for whatever reason as a side project, or fill in for a band because their drummer can't, it's only benefited him as a drummer. And when he's asked to play drums and takes it on for anyone else, he puts 1,000% into it, and for that, I can admire and appreciate that. And between him and me, that goes along with a mutual attitude, of put 1,000% into everything we do. And that's also that bodes well for our relationship and our chemistry, because we have that attitude, and as I said earlier, people's personalities and chemistry, nothing, in a lot of cases, this is specific to being in bands. It's not always perfect, and so to have that magic of chemistry and attitude, it means a lot. And I think the fans get that. You could, when you convey that everybody, whether it's an album a fan listens to, or when you see a band live, and you either hear or see, or both, and get the impression like, oh, that's a unit. These guys are really together on a mission to deliver the best for the fans, So that's part of my belief anyway. So and I'm very grateful that Mike and I met and came into each other's life. By the way, speaking of Mike, I do want to mention that we just Broken Hope just had to cancel 2 European festivals that we were supposed to play next week, because Mike's has been expecting his first child. And when we booked these shows, one's called Party Sand Open Air in Germany, one's called Brutal Assault in the Czech Republic that we played a couple of times, and we have a live concert DVD from a Brutal Assault concert we did, as well as Broken Hope. And say back in December, January, when we were offered these shows, we knew Mike was going to have a baby, right? So we're like, are you sure you want to do these shows? Because right away you said, yeah, I'm in. And we're like, that's going to be close to when the babies due. And Mike, because of his attitude, to play and be there for the fans and blah blah blah, he's like, no, I talked to my wife, and she actually wants me to be present for the baby's birth, but to go do those shows the same week and come back, it's going to be like 2 shows in and out and whatever. And that says a lot about Mike's dedication to playing and everything, because it's like most people imagine having your first child, uh, even if you're there for the birth and you could play that same week later, a lot of people would be like, I can't do it. I'm not doing it. I'm going to be home with my new baby and my wife. But Mike's wife said, you should do it. You don't know when you're going to do this again, and go out, do them, come back home. But unfortunately, for the shows, not unfortunately for Mike. The baby didn't deliver when it was supposed to this past week. It was, I'm talking to you on August 2nd. So the baby was due on the 30th, and that was the plan the whole time. But due to complications or whatever, that's been delayed. So the baby is supposed to be delivered per doctor's wishes, maybe next Tuesday or Wednesday. And that's when we were going to leave for Europe. So we had to cancel those shows. So again, that's my long-winded explanation about why we canceled shows and about Mike. But again, it speaks volumes about Mike, his dedication and willing to do everything to for the fans and for the sake of death metal and everything. So anyway, so as I talk to you today, whenever this comes out, that's what's going on right now. So we just canceled those shows yesterday, made a statement and whatnot. But yeah, Mike, he's one of the best things that ever happened to me as far as being a guy in a band, for sure.
Yeah, it was cool seeing the positive reaction to that announcement too. I know the last few days I've been joking with Mike that the baby's probably trying to time things so that it is a live birth at Kite String Cantina during heavy metal horror bingo.
Right. Yeah, right. Oh, that's funny. Are you part of that heavy metal bingo thing at all?
I've,
Because I heard
I've
him
gone a
talk
time or
about
two.
that. Because yeah, he's been like, oh, heavy metal bingo. Um, I do this, or he said something like, I do this thing, heavy metal bingo or whatever. And it's like, what's that? He's told me a little bit about it, but he's, I've never participated, but it always sounded like fun. But yeah, and Mike also said something like, well, I can't blame the kid. I wouldn't want to come out either. It's nice in there. Yeah, so there's that too. Yeah.
Yeah, back to the production on the Earthburner album. I think I was reading that there's both a digital mix and an analog mix. What was the thought process for doing that?
So that was a really cool thing that just was unexpected in the studio. And what that was, how that how the digital and analog versions of Permanent Dawn came to be was um we recorded all the music um down in at Criteria Recording Studios in Miami, which is a legendary recording studio. It's like you could equate it to like one of the last great baseball parks in the world, like Wrigley Field in Chicago or Fenway in Boston. There's not many original, vintage, legendary baseball places, stadiums, or whatever in the world. Criteria is one of the last of the real legendary recording studios that's super famous, that's still active and doing great things. So um, when we were in that studio, we recorded in Studio C. So Criteria's got, imagine it's like a complex with maybe 8 different rooms, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc. And Studio C is really cool in itself because that room's got a lot of history, like Sabbath, Heaven and Hell was recorded there with Dio, and then other epic albums that aren't metal, like Fleetwood Mac Rumors, the Eagles Hotel California, Bee Gees Saturday Night Fever, and just on and on. There's something special about that room, not just the history, but the way it's set up acoustically, the equipment that's in there. Like we recorded through this Neve board and these great microphones and whatnot, and then we mixed the album in Studio A on an SSL board. And not to bore your viewers with, a bunch of technical stuff, but because of that studio and that kind of equipment to record on this Neve console and mix on an SSL, it works together on a production level to really, kick things up a notch. So what happened is during mixing in Studio A, because Criteria, as I said, has been around, since, I don't know, the 50s, like the first gold record that the studio ever received was from James Brown, I Feel Good. That was done there. And then they got that was like their first gold single or whatever. So the place has been around a long time. And what's relevant to them being around a long time is they still have in another say storage facility nearby all this vintage gear from the old days. And what I didn't realize, because despite me co-producing the Earthburner album, and even with all my years of recording with Broken Hope, I'm not like an expert on gear and technology by any means whatsoever. And what I didn't realize is that they had the capabilities of, as we're mixing and everything's on Pro Tools, the main guy that runs Criteria brought to my attention, my friend Trevor, who runs Criteria recording studios. He's like, you know what, dude? We could actually take this album as you're mixing and also have it transferred the analog to actual tape. And I'm like, well, who even makes analog tape anymore? He's like, there's some companies that still do, and we actually keep new reels in stock, and we can pull out this old reel-to-reel machine and have the album mixed digitally and done digitally, but we can also in real time make an analog version. So I'm like, let's go for it. So we did that. And what's really cool about that is the analog version has this really warm sound, and it's really punchy, and it's same friggin' album, but it's got a different feel, if you will, sonically to your ears. And also with that, what was cool that and I don't want to sound arrogant because it was my idea, but I remember being a teenager when Rain and Blood came out. And again, I sound like old man Wagner here, but when Rain and Blood came out in '86, I was still in high school, and it was my favorite album at the time. It's still one of my favorite albums of all time. But what I would do is what Slayer did with Rain and Blood is when it came out on cassette, because the album's like 28 minutes long, that the record label put the whole album on side A and then the whole album on side B. And I was like, our album's like 28 minutes long. M Theory Audio is going to make cassettes and vinyl. So let's give our fans, when this comes out, a cassette that has side A is the album's Permanent Dawn, called Permanent Dawn. So side A, we call Digital Dawn, which is the digital version. And side B is the whole album, and that's Analog Dawn. And we also did that for the vinyl versions of the album. So it's just a cool thing that wasn't planned, and it was presented to us, and I just jumped at the opportunity to have two versions. And M Theory Audio, who are cool as hell, were like, you know what? That's a great friggin' idea. Let's do it. So that's just another cool thing we offer to anyone who picks up, say, the cassette or vinyl. They'll get both versions. I'm not sure if the CD, and I should know because it's my band, but I don't know if the CD has both versions. But we definitely have it on vinyl and cassette. But that's how, anyway, that's how the two different versions happened, and we did it, and whatever. It's just it's a cool thing, and it's for me personally almost a little nod to teenage, 16-year-old Jeremy Wagner who would put Rain and Blood on a boombox at full blast while I headbanging in the shower before school, listening to the whole album on one side. I'm like, cool. I'm doing that with Earthburner. Yeah,
Yeah.
So that's the story on that.
Yeah, the CD comment I think is funny because it just made me think of do you remember around like 2004 a bunch of labels experimented with like dual disc where it was a two-sided CD and it like kind of
Oh,
fizzled out after like less than a year.
yeah, yeah. I kind of remember that. I had never done that with a CD before, but I vaguely remember that being done. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of an interesting concept at the time, but I remember the couple of them that I bought, I always felt really paranoid that I was going to scratch like one side or the other.
Yeah. It like when I think of like CDs, like um maybe we'll do this down the line after it comes out, but like with the digital and analog version, maybe at some point we could do like a special digipack so fans could have both versions on CD, like digital and analog. Because like with Broken Hope, we've done our last two albums, we gave fans the entire album, and then we included a bonus disc that would be like with Home and the Disease, our bonus disc was a little documentary about Broken Hope, and then a live concert was also included, like a Pro Shot concert was on there. And then we did a live album from Brutal Assault, actually, which was our one and only live album we've ever done. So you got the live album, and then on Blu-ray in the same package, you got the Pro Shot concert of that same live album, and then same thing with the last album, Mutilated and Assimilated. You got the album and the live concert DVD. So to that end, maybe we'll do something like that in the future. If there's another pressing of Earthburner, we can provide the analog and digital versions, that way on CD.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I still
Yeah.
buy pretty much everything on CD and that's always been one of my favorite things when bands are able to do it with the format is, throw in that extra disc with bonus material or documentary material or just things like that. I think there's even been a few times where I've gone back and bought the same album twice because a version came out later with extra stuff like that. So
Right.
it's always cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, I love bonus content as a fan as well, I think that's important, whether it's demo material or whatever.
I can think of even like both albums and sometimes movies where I'll buy like the same movie multiple times. I've bought like the original Star Wars trilogy at least like three times because of just different formats. It's like
Yep.
stuff like that all the time.
Hmm. Yeah, are you a big Star Wars fan?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Me too. I when I was a kid, Star Wars came out, and I was to this day I love Star Wars. I'm a huge fan, but that was my life as a kid, man, was all Star Wars. Saw it in the theater and just couldn't stop thinking about it. And then, every birthday and every Christmas, it was Star Wars action figures and all, the old the original like ships that they'd make, X-Wing fighters, the Millennium Falcon, which is my favorite ship, or um, Slave One, Boba Fett ship. I had all that stuff, but
Yeah.
that's cool. That's
Yeah, I had the
uh,
mid 90s line of like
uh
all that stuff because I had around like 8 or 9, I just randomly caught Empire Strikes Back on USA one afternoon on a weekend and was hooked from there on. Which kind of made it weird the first time that I saw the original Star Wars because I had already seen Empire, but
okay. Yep.
uh I guess like a year after that was when they did the special editions, the re-releases to kind of gauge interest in whether they were going to do the
Oh,
prequels.
right. And they added like the CGI stuff in it,
Yeah,
remember, and they brought them back for theatrical releases with the CGI added content, or what, enhanced versions and stuff. And yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
yeah. Like there's stuff as an adult that I noticed in those movies that I never thought of as a kid, like Return of the Jedi when the color of Luke's outfit, they had him wear a darker color because you were supposed to question whether he was on the fence of being good or bad.
Yeah.
Like at the end, the shirt is kind of like flapped over and you see the white part of the inside of it, and it's like, oh, that
Yeah.
signifies that he's chosen good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. As a kid, from a kid's point of view, because I worship Star Wars uh, so much, when like Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi were coming out, it was like I had to be at the theater and got to see it immediately. I can't wait for it to come out. And um, as you know, I'm a grade schooler, and I had a crush on Princess Leia. I was like, oh, she's beautiful, and she's, like. And in Star Wars, when Luke Skywalker is rescuing her, and he was disguised as a stormtrooper, and they're getting ready to swing on that rope or whatever. He gives her a kiss, and it kind of made me think like there's a romantic angle here. And then later you find out they're brother and sister or whatever. And as a kid, I was confused. I'm like, I thought aside from Han Solo, I thought Luke and Leia would be an item or something. And then I'm like, wait, what's going on here? As a kid, I'm like, I'm not sure I'm following the story,
Yeah.
but yeah, but that's interesting. When you mention that, those are kind of like Easter eggs, like down to like what they're wearing is a sign of this, or check this out. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
um,
Dude, I
and
got to
the
meet Carrie Fisher the October before she died. And
same here,
oh,
in Chicago
I met
at,
her in New York.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
she did some kind of like one of these huge fan type exposition things, and it was her and like her French bulldog or whatever was next to her, and she was super nice, and that was like right before she passed away. But yeah, it was cool to meet her.
Yeah, I walked up to her table at New York Comic Con wearing like a movie quality Han Solo costume. And she looked up at me and she goes, I love your outfit. You look adorable. And I said, this is a hell of a place to meet a princess, huh? And she goes, come here. And she grabs the side of my face and pulls me across the table. And our faces are like this far apart. And I'm just like, I don't understand what's about to happen here because, like, I'm looking at Princess Leia, like, straight in her eyes. She reaches
Right.
down and grabs, like, a handful of glitter and rubs it all over my face and my neck. And then she signs my Blu-rays and sends me on my way.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah. It's like, it's
Great.
probably my favorite celebrity encounter that I've ever had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool, man. I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. What do you think about the newer Star Wars stuff? Because I know that's like a minefield for a lot of people.
yeah. Um, some of it I've really liked. There's one of the biggest Star Wars fans. Um, that I know in the whole world is Ross Dolan of Immolation. And in fact, anytime um, something Star Wars worthy news is out, he's like one of the first people that seems to hear about it, and he texts me right away, dude, check this out. This is coming. And I mean, he's a Star Wars freak. And like back when they started doing like side story kind of movies, Rogue One,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that a lot. And then even the excuse me, the forget the name, the animated type series that
Yeah,
Disney
the
put
Clone
out.
Wars, and then they had Rebels.
Clone, yes.
Yeah.
So I've enjoyed those. And then now there's the most recent one, to my knowledge, is I think is it related to Chewbacca or something like that. I forget the name.
They did
What
the Acolyte most recently.
sorry, Acolyte, yeah.
Yeah.
That I haven't seen yet.
Oh,
And I've heard um people from uh like Ross and other diehards, you get a mixture of I from those guys I know love the Acolyte, and then I've got other people that are like everything was cool up until the Acolyte. Now we didn't like it, don't waste your time or whatever. So what did you think of it? Because
I
I
loved
haven't
it.
seen it. I haven't seen it yet. Everything
Yeah.
up till now, I've enjoyed,
I love the Acolyte because like it's set like 100 years before the prequels.
Hmm.
So you get a period that's kind of removed from any of like the Skywalker saga, but there's a few familiar things in there that I don't want to spoil for you. And the overall gist of it kind of ties into the plot of um basically like where Anakin came from.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
so the that's kind of the direction the plot of the Acolyte ends up going. But like I don't want to spoil too much more beyond
Okay.
that.
Well, Roger, I'll take your recommendation seriously, no matter what. If you're like you
Yeah.
dug it and think it's cool, I'm gonna, definitely make a point to watch it. I'm always looking for something new to watch as well, constantly. So, um, I'll put that on my to watch list. One thing I just thought of, relevant to Star Wars and asking if, what I thought about the franchise as it's moved on. Um, one thing I really liked, like with like going back to like Rogue One, is how I mentioned earlier about movies having Easter eggs and stuff. Who the people that wrote and put together Rogue One, what was really cool is I got the impression whoever the team was that made the film were true Star Wars fans because if you recall, um, the main characters, I forget whatever planet they're on. Um, there was like, um, God damn it, what's the planet that Luke came from?
Oh,
Uh,
Tatooine.
yeah, I think it would, if I remember right, I think they were maybe on Tatooine or something. But anyway, um, it certainly Easter egg type of things and a dedicated team to respecting the story and the franchise. Like you would see just stuff in the background, like an Imperial droid, like from The Empire Strikes Back, from the planet Hoth, that same type of droid, like in the background going through the streets and stuff. And I don't know, I just get a kick out of that kind of crap.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
with all of the new stuff that comes out, like one of the things that I always try to keep in mind is that Disney, like when they bought Lucasfilm, they inherited like a whole like expansive uh like expanded universe of stories beyond just the movies and everything, which they had to just say we're gonna have to like wipe the slate clean beyond like these movies and this handful of shows, and then build new from there with like new expanded universe stories. And like the further they go with releasing new stuff, it makes more sense why they had to do that, because as much as fans might have been attached to that older expanded universe material, they couldn't faithfully adapt that in newer material with the original actors being the ages that they were. So like now with the sequel trilogy, they basically adapted Dark Empire but had to change different things because um all of the original actors were at the ages that they were. And then Mandalorian and Ahsoka and all of that is basically adapting like Heir to the Empire, but
Hmm.
without those original characters, because the actors, couldn't do those roles at their ages now.
Right. Yeah. It's important for the legacy, and this is just my personal opinion, but I feel it's important for the legacy and George Lucas's vision and whatnot, that an entity like Disney and all those handlers uh really do whatever their best to preserve that legacy with the storyline and everything relevant, instead of like, well, as you'd say, Roger, phone it in just to throw
Yeah.
content out there. It's like, that's way, 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 way too important of a, uh, uh, I use the word legacy versus franchise. Franchise to me is like, it is a, I guess, franchise, but my point is that's a little too, for me, dismissive. It's really, um, carrying on the legacy and keeping things accurate with storylines, characters, and, um, pulling it off the right way. If you're going to keep going down the Star Wars path, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the way that I always look at stuff like that and like Marvel comics and DC comics and so on is that a lot of that storytelling over the years, with the amount of people that have, grown with it and identified with it, it kind of just becomes like modern mythologies, where like if there some future civilization thousands of years from now, if they were to dig it up, they might look at that the same way that we look at like the Norse mythologies or the Greek mythologies.
Right. Yeah. 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 Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's important. And on that subject, not to nerd out too much, but just my point of view with certain things too is like, when people talk about rebooting movies, with Star Wars, all right, it's great. There's sequels George Lucas did, and then now someone else is carrying that torch and making all this new Star Wars universe content. But that's fine. But then there's certain things, um like, uh that shouldn't be rebooted. Like, I couldn't imagine like someone trying to reboot the actual original Star Wars, say the movie,
Yeah.
or Star Wars: A New Hope, or reboot Jaws or The Godfather, or whatever. There's like, there's things that are sacred, and, um also, like you mentioned, 1,000 years from now, if people have these things in their hands and they're looking at how the story started and how it was laid out, um, you know, uh, hopefully they'll be seeing things that are true to the original vision and what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, things don't often work out when popular mythologies have people latch on to offshoots that aren't true to the original vision.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
So going to just Chicago metal broadly, since Broken Hope is seen as like one of the seminal like Chicago death metal bands. When you look back at, that period of time, um, given that Chicago also is kind of its legacy in heavy music and, extreme metal in particular is kind of unsung to an extent. Who would you say are probably like maybe like the five like most underrated Chicago bands from that early era?
You talk like death metal or just in general or
Yeah, I would say kind of on the death metal side of things because I feel like Chicago's role in the early days of death metal in particular is kind of unsung because like there was Paul
yeah,
Speckmann and Master and like all of that.
right. Like one band that comes to mind that were uh really really a standout underground band that never put an album out, but um they wrote really great songs and they also went the extra mile with even with their demos, like the quality of their demos and packaging and also really strong songs was a band called Sindrome, Sindrome. Syndrome. Um, it's actually a band my old bass player Sean from Broken Hope came from, Syndrome. Um, they were I felt really underrated because their music was really strong and their underground presence was huge and they should have definitely had, like some albums out. And then there's bands like just off the top of my head, I remember when Broken Hope first came out with Swamped and Gore, there were bands from Chicago like Cianide. That was another one that was really good. There's a great death doom metal band called Avernus that was also really great. And they're actually back now. Coincidentally, they have an album coming out on M Theory Audio, same label Earthburner's on. Um, and then you had Master, as you mentioned. You know,
Yeah, I think
Paul
like Speckman had
Speckmann,
like five bands at one point,
he,
right? Yeah.
yeah, he had, I think,
It was like
Death
Abomination and
Strike
Funeral
and like
Bitch and yeah.
Abomination. Yeah, yeah. And uh Speckman's um like especially with Master, that's a case of like I feel that they're also underrated, but they're were so hugely influential. Because if you um talk to like Napalm Death guys, or some other old school death metal bands, they'll tell you that they were hugely influenced by Master. And even though this isn't a Chicago band, but same era and same kind of influence, like Repulsion, like the next state over out of Michigan, you know, those, like Master was in this class of grinding death metal and did things no one else was doing, in extreme metal at that time. And being Chicago's own, there was no band like them at all. So I would definitely have to say Master, is underrated for sure. Oh, one band, definitely Chicago land band that hugely underrated, I feel, is in this, mind you, this band has had different incarnations and albums out and stuff, but I want to go back to the old days, what you're talking about. And there's a band called Numskull, Numskull, and their debut album, can't remember the friggin' name of it, but it was like so damn good. It was like incredible. Like the songs were amazing, the musicianship top of the line. Like they were they were up there with like a mixture between, I'm talking like death thrash, so like Death, Dark Angel, uh, like that. They should have been at that level because they were musically that first album, and that musicianship and the impact those songs had, at least on me. um they should have been huge, I felt, because they were at the right place, right time, mid to late 80s. And God, they're just so good. And uh to that end, they're very underrated. And it's just that's a band that should have been way bigger. So relevant to Chicago, that Numskull original lineup, first album era specifically for me. Even their demo that was out before that, just phenomenal. I don't know if you covered Numskull at all when you were doing some of your Chicago stuff, but that's definitely a band that's uh I feel a very important part of the fabric of Chicago metal history, if you will.
Yeah,
And
I'll have to look them up.
yeah, yeah, really just uh yeah, just fantastic. Yeah. And
Yeah.
first um that first album, bear with me. I'm going to just see if I can find it here. Because oh, here we go. Ritually Abused, that album. Um they were formed in 1985, uh and then yeah, I'm just reading here, their first demo, Numbs the Word, that came out in 1987. That's right before they got signed. And um, yeah, I just remember seeing them play locally. I was still in high school and stuff, and I'm like, uh, holy cow, this band is actually incredible. Holy shit. And I can't believe they're like from the next town over. You know what I mean? Like I'm almost like a starstruck teenager. This local band just blew me away like none other. And then boom, next thing I know, they got a record deal and Ritually Abused album comes out, and I couldn't stop listening to it. But they're a band that I would definitely classify as underrated, and definitely worth a mention, as part of Chicago metal history.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out because I know back when I had done that series for the AV Club, after it was published, I used to, look at the comments and just kind of try to make note of um anyone that like people thought that maybe I overlooked, because there were
Right.
only like realistically so many people that I could talk to for one thing. But the best overview that I got when I was starting that out was just meeting up with Mike and Scott from Cianide, which is like
Yeah.
meeting up with the two film critics from the Muppets to some extent. But
Yeah. Yeah.
they're a trip when they're together. But um, like I got like a pretty solid crash course in Chicago metal from them, from like Trouble and Zoetrope up through Master and Syndrome. And
Oh,
yeah.
oh yeah, dude. Zoetrope or Etrope. I've heard the name pronounced different ways, but that was another band that was uh fantastic too, man. And the great late Barry Stern, drummer, he was, just as an individual, a very important part of like Chicago metal history too. He became the drummer of Trouble, later, and he was a long time drummer for them. But I remember one of the first bands I ever formed in high school with Joe, our singer from Broken Hope. We weren't called Broken Hope at the time. We think we were called Decimation or something. And one of the guys in our it was like our first real band, high school band, and one of the guys in our band knew the E-Trope guys and was like, hey, because I had heard of the band, obviously being a teenager from Chicago, I'd see their name. I knew they had an album out or whatever. And he's like, we can go to their band practice and check them out. So we did. And I'm looking at the walls of all their flyers from all their shows, and there's like flyer of like Slayer with E-Trope at the Metro in Chicago. And like, as a teenager and a Slayer fan, I'm like, what? You guys open for Slayer? Like I couldn't believe it. Like, the mentality of a teenager, I couldn't get through my head like a local band had ever opened for Slayer. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that was pretty cool. But so cool you mentioned them because yeah, that's a band that's definitely an important part of Chicago metal history for sure.
And we've been talking for about an hour and a half now, and I don't want to take up your whole afternoon, but
No, no worries, man. Sorry, like I told you, dude, when I get talking, I take the long way around to get to a point, but I appreciate your time.
yeah, and I guess just one more thing real quick. As far as you being an author and also a TV and film producer, what kind of things are you working on those fronts these days?
I've got so on the book front, I have a new novel that'll be coming out in 2025 called Wretch. And I can't wait for that to come out. It's been long overdue. And then I have actually believe it or not, I wrote a memoir, not for me, but for a famous Chicago chef named Curtis Duffy. And Chef Curtis Duffy has a Michelin starred restaurant in Chicago called Ever. And before Ever, he had a really famous restaurant called Grace, which was a three Michelin starred restaurant. And Netflix made a documentary about him and Grace restaurant in like 2015. And he's a good friend of mine, but he approached me. We've been good friends for a while. He approached me one day, hey, I'd like you to write my memoir. And I'm like, well, why me? And he's like, well, I love your books. You're a great writer, and I also trust you, and I want to tell my story because what's in the documentary about me just glosses the surface. And the more we talked and he started telling me stuff about his life, I was blown away. So with anything I do, Roger, like I won't write anything I'm not interested in. But his story is insane. It's like he's raised in a Hell's Angels biker household, very brutal, crazy upbringing, finds that he loves cooking, gets when he becomes old enough, starts working in kitchens and becomes a chef, and then uh, like he's this super famous chef now, like one in 20 maybe in the world who's gotten like three Michelin stars, 8, 9 times in a row. But his story is basically like Sons of Anarchy meets Anthony Bourdain Kitchen Confidential. It's just it's brutal, crazy, and it's like it weaves in, with this biker lifestyle, crazy upbringing, and the culinary world and all this stuff. So anyway, with that synopsis, I've got his memoir coming out. So Wretch is more of a horror, straight up Wagner on brand, like fucked up horror story. Takes place in Chicago, by the way. And Chef Duffy's memoir, both will be out next year. And then right now I'm writing a new novel, and I've got a couple other different kind of book projects coming out. And I also own a I'm co-owner of a publishing company called Dead Sky Publishing, and we do horror novels, and we also do nonfiction. So like the artist Mark Rudolph, who does illustrations for Decibel magazine and Metal Hammer. We have an art book by him coming out. We did a photo book by photographer Gene Ambo called Heavy Metro, and it's Gene's 40 years of pictures of heavy metal bands, punk bands, and hardcore bands, and some rock bands who exclusively played the Metro in Chicago. So you got like Metallica. The first time they played Chicago was at the Metro. Gene took their photos. Same with Slayer, Nirvana, Celtic Frost, Voivod, blah, blah, blah. And then we also do have a shitload of comic book titles that we put out and graphic novels and stuff. So I mention all that because aside from my own books that are coming out, books and comics are a huge part of my life, period, because of Dead Sky Publishing. And then on the film front, I've got a media company, Aphotic Media, and we sold a TV series that I wrote and created. Can't say who or when it's coming out. I wrote it and made it all, and we sold it, but who knows what these agents and networks will do with it. And then I've got 2 documentaries that they're almost done. They're in editing and being color corrected and stuff. But one of them is a sequel to Curtis Duffy's other documentary from 2015. And then the other documentary, and talk about subjects that couldn't be more different. My other documentary is on legendary porn star Peter North. So, so I've done a lot of, kind of like how Mike plays all these different styles of drums and bands. For me, like writing scripts is a totally different animal than writing a novel, and writing a memoir is a totally different animal than writing scripts or a novel. So it specific to the film world, writing scripts and having that experience is just, and the memoir too, it's just broadened my skills as a writer, which I think is a really cool thing, and fortunately, so far it's been successful, and it's also been pretty rewarding. And so I'll keep you posted on when that stuff comes out. But those are, I'm trying to keep fewer and fewer irons in the fire. I'm really trying nowadays to do Earthburner on the music side, and write my own books, and then the film stuff that I've done when it comes out, great. I don't know what I'll do next with film, but right now I'm just trying to focus on what I really want to do without being stressed out too much, which is Earthburner and writing my own books. So that's what's happening here right now.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want everyone to know before we wrap things up?
I just want to say, whoever's watching this, thanks for listening to me talk about everything forever. And our Earthburner album, Permanent Dawn, comes out November 8th through M Theory Audio. And Roger, I wanted to thank you for having me on Cult House Podcast. I really appreciate you and your time. And it's just been great talking to you. And as always, to any fans I have out there, thanks, whether you follow Broken Hope or Into Broken Hope, Earthburner, or what I write. Thank you as always for the support, and means a lot to me.
Yeah, no, thanks for taking time out of your day, Jeremy.
My pleasure.
Rock you